rustic, farmhouse, or traditional. Whatever the choice, it's up to you. Stone River Furniture at Classic Interiors is truly a piece of craftsmanship that will last for generations and be the center of attraction at any gathering. Classic Interiors designers can personally help you select the pieces that will make your home a classic. Check out the new Classic Interiors showroom on the corner of First and Holmes and Idaho Falls.
Hey KID crew, welcome to this edition of Table Talk. I am joined by some really incredible thought leaders in our community, and we are looking forward to having a really productive conversation. I continue to believe that there's some real magic that happens when you gather around the table and break bread and engage in important conversations. And you know, in a time where more and more people are disconnecting, having these kinds of conversations has never really been more important. So, speaking of the food, a great big thank you to Gandolfo's for providing our delicious lunch. They step up every single time and they deliver big time for us. And then Table Talk is powered by Classic Interiors. And when you're thinking about a table to gather around, let me tell you, they can help you out. They've got a gorgeous selection, and they feature Stone River Amish crafted dining tables and chairs that come right from the heart of Amish country in Mansfield, Ohio. And each of these pieces are custom designed and built to last a lifetime. So you can be sure that you'll have plenty of great conversations around a Classic Interiors table. So again, a big thank you to Mark and his team at Classic Interiors. Right off the bat, we are going to just get the introductions out of the way. So we'll start right here with Kimber.
Hi, I'm Kimber Pierce. I am the president of the Turning Point USA chapter in Rexburg, Idaho. We are a student organization that is based by Charlie Kirk down in Arizona, and there are chapters all over different high schools and colleges all throughout the country, and our aim and goal is to help students participate in activism and enacting change in the country and standing up for their beliefs. And so I'm really passionate about sharing my opinions and encouraging others to think for themselves.
I love that, Kimber, that you're part of an organization that is really urging young people to get off the couch, put down their devices, and really get involved in making a difference, and that's just incredible. Ryan.
Yeah, Ryan Harris. I'm the CEO of the RiseX Professional Growth Network. We're a local group that creates meaningful impact on people, organizations, and communities. Really try to work together, collaborate with business leaders in the community to help rise the tides of all ships, right? And grow together. So.
And you know, Ryan, right now, poll after poll continues to suggest that Americans are going to vote with their wallet, and that the economy and inflation is something that is of great concern. So that business development is so positive that is happening right here in our community. And you've got a lot of movers and shakers in your group.
We do. We have some amazing humans in the community that all really are working with the same aim and goal of trying to bring more economic impact, economic development to this community. I mean, we live in a community that's growing very quickly, and I don't think that our business community is keeping up quite as quickly as we need it to, in order to provide the resources, the jobs, the opportunities for people to stay here. So.
Yeah, the growth is happening, so it's all about kind of managing that growth.
That's right.
And I think it's remarkable that so many people in our community are willing to share what they've learned to help lift and strengthen other people who are just starting out on that business journey. So thank you. And Jan.
I'm Jan Brown. I'm a retired nonprofit executive. I first came to Idaho Falls in 1976 and have moved back at this point 3 more times. But I'm running for Brownville County Commissioner primarily because I think our county needs to be more proactive in dealing with its growth challenges. My background is natural resources, outdoor recreation, and I think there's a lot more we can do in revise the Caribou-Targhee National Forest Plan and a lot of the county recreation projects that need to advance. So I'm very happy to be running on the Democratic ticket. I won primary as a write-in, and I am the state committee woman for the Democratic Party here in Bonneville County.
Jen, you're so right. We have so many great resources, and we live in a gorgeous part of the country, and so maximizing that is really, really important. So thank you for being here. And Carl.
My name is Carl Casperson. I'm the Administrative Sergeant for the Bonham County Sheriff's Office. I've worked for the Sheriff's Office since 1985. I'm the father of 7 children and 1 granddaughter. I'm also an implant to the area. The Navy brought me here in 1983, and I decided to stay. And it's been just looking ahead since then. It is a beautiful community. It's close still to my roots in Montana. And again, also I'm running for Bonham County Commissioner, District 1. As a police officer, I've been involved in a lot of different things within the Sheriff's Office, but also within other community groups in the Sheriff's Office, and are familiar with the growth and the impact of that. So I'm hoping to just continue what's been done with the current commissioner, board of commissioners, and make improvements on the things that we can.
And I'm just guessing, but I bet that little granddaughter is the apple of your eye.
Totally. Very much so.
Very much. And you see a lot working with the Sheriff's Office, and there have been some really interesting things that Sheriff Holtz has brought out. He's had a great deal to say about some of the challenges that we sometimes think are only happening in other places. So we're going to have an opportunity to really examine how some of those national issues are affecting us right here at home. All right, look, none of us could have written a script for what we have seen with this election process. I mean, we said how many times, oh, this is going to be like nothing we've seen before. But I don't think any of us could have predicted a couple of assassination attempts, a switch of a candidate nominee. There's been a lot. So I want to start, and since we started with you, Kimber, we'll just start right here with Carl and give you an opportunity to kind of reflect on what you have seen, what stands out to you about this election cycle. We know the stakes are really high, and what issue is it that you're most concerned with?
I think the thing that I am concerned most with is the economy, and the impact of the decisions of the current administration on that, bringing in the millions of people unvetted, and we don't know much about them as far as their backgrounds. There's all allegations about the criminal backgrounds of most of them, but that's going to have a huge impact on not just border states, but like they say, we're all border states now. We're all impacted by that influx of people. The other thing that I see that is concerning is just I guess the hatred that you see running rampant in all of the races. I think Jan and I have kind of tried to show a different way of doing things, and we've done some combined collaborative informational forums, and just have been trying to get that kind of stuff going, and to me it's refreshing. I've had a lot of positive comments on that, but growth, I think, is the biggest thing in our community that we're having to deal with on a day-to-day basis. With driving to and from town now takes over half an hour town, across town, and what used to be 5 to 10 minutes. So.
And I'm glad you brought up hate, because that is something that we're seeing just explode. We're seeing it happen at younger and younger ages. Kids just impulsively act out in these really violent ways at 11, 12, 13. So there's no question that we've got to find a way to get a handle on that. And with the work that you do at the Sheriff's Office, I'm sure you have a front row seat for how that hate, when it's not controlled, can really lead people down a spiral that is not leading anywhere positive.
No, it's a huge impact.
And I'm so glad you brought up the way that you and Jan are interacting, KID crew, as I first came in, to see these two sitting here and collaborating, and there's no animosity, there's a friendship, and it's evident that both of you two recognize that you're on the same team, and that you may have some differences about how to achieve things, but you both know what needs to happen. And I think it is refreshing. And I continue to believe that our community can really lead out and be an example for the rest of the country, because I'm telling you what, you don't really see this kind of thing going on very often. There is a definite tension with a lot of candidates. So thank you both for your example. And Jan, how about you? Same question?
Honestly, that's an interesting statement about hate, because it's one reason I came back to Idaho Falls to retire, is that this community has been welcoming every time I've come back. My original time here, and then coming back and right after COVID. I believe that part of it is the deep faith communities that we have here. I'm a Presbyterian elder, but I can tell you that there's so many people who are of integrity and you can trust them, and there's goodwill. And all of those things ought to translate into our political discourse, I would hope. So I would say how we can be an example is just to continue this through the rest of the campaign, for sure. But it's something that's very important to me, is the character of leadership. And I would say there's 5 things that I would advance to young people particularly, or even business people, and that is to show courage and to have integrity, to have prudence in everything we do, which is both conservatism as well as having an idea of what your actions, what the outcome will be from your actions, to be flexible, and to bring talent. And I think that's where we go with business, to make sure that people's gifts can flourish in a community. I think that comes not just through one's faith community, by the way, but with businesses of integrity, community activities, and media.
And you know, Jen, you're onto something there. That attitude really does spread, and it affects everything in our community. And I was mentioning yesterday on the show that when I meet people who are coming to this community for the first time, they are so blown away by that feeling that they can't even really put a finger on,
Right.
but it's like nowhere else. And we live in a place where neighbors still take care of neighbors, and it's not like that everywhere else. And I think sometimes we don't recognize how special that is because we're used to it. It happens, but it's not happening everywhere. And Ryan, how about you?
You know, it's a loaded question for me. You know, in the business community, I'm grateful that I'm not in the construct of the political realms,
Right.
and try to keep myself aloof from them as much as I possibly can, simply because I know there is so much controversy.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that's fascinating to me, and I think one of my biggest concerns, is where is truth found?
I love that.
Right? We currently are in a world where the First Amendment, right, that we have of freedom of speech really is being questioned in a lot of ways. It's being pulled and pushed from one side to the other, and I you know, it's always fascinating to me that I typically try to listen to all opinions, and it's so crazy to me how different the same topic is presented across media platforms, and a lot of it is just for viewership, but that specific dynamic of how things are presented, and one way or the other, really create divisiveness because no one knows what truth is anymore, right? We just live in a world where it's like, okay, is that true or is it not? Is it, you know, you hear stories of the border crossings, you hear stories on both sides of the table of, well, it was this person's fault. And I wish inside of our government there would be an extreme element of ownership. Instead of passing the buck and pointing
Accountability
fingers,
is a beautiful
accountability.
thing.
On both sides.
And on every side, for every person. I wish people would recognize that, you know, accountability is a key critical component to success in life. And as I look at it, you know, I was listening to a podcast the other day, it was super fascinating to me. And the gentleman that I was listening to, he's been a longtime mentor of mine, just through podcasts, right? It's amazing where mentors come anymore, it's not like in person. But he was saying it's fascinating that what the government is saying as a whole is not what's happening in reality, right? What's being shared across all the media platforms about how good or how bad everything is. If we look to the small dynamics of our local experience, we're feeling some of those things, but sometimes it's better than it is worse, right? And if we could find a way where the thing that I love about working with business leaders in the community is it's always so positive. Like, we know that, again, depending on your beliefs, if you get government out of the way, we can do just fine, right? Business can do just fine, right? And we've seen that happen. Capitalism is very, very important to the American dream. And with all the regulations that potentially could be in place, I'm not saying that they are, but if there was additional regulations that are placed on certain businesses, it just has a huge impact. I've noticed that we've all seen, the government regulations in the state of California now increasing the wages have dramatically impacted the small business leaders. And, in our community here, 80 to 90% of the businesses that make up the economic dynamic is through small business.
Right.
So the more we impact the small business, the more it's going to actually impact everyday household consumers. It's going to impact business leaders, because at some point, you can only fight the uphill battle for so long as a business leader. I think the statistics are your 2 or 3 months of not receiving, of your customers not paying from being out of business anyway, when it comes to small business. So if there's additional restrictions and demands on business in the private sector, it could be really detrimental to not only the business leaders, but then the community is impacted because people lose jobs. I've talked to several people, and I think that would be the other thing, in my opinion, is I'm finding that, with the advancement of technology, artificial intelligence,
Oh, yes.
a lot of jobs, C-suite executives, it's almost a mid-tier level of executives. It's kind of diminishing, right? The thought leadership and the knowledge associated with being inside an organization and creating an impact is almost being replaced by technology because it's incredibly intelligent. It knows almost everything about us, right? So that mid-tier management level is almost dissipating, and I have several of my friends that are currently unemployed looking for that mid-tier management position, and they've been out of a job for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, a year, 2 years. And so it's an interesting dynamic. I think something we've never seen in the business realm of senior leadership recognizing the power of artificial intelligence and what it can do, leveraging their less expensive team members, and even as impactful, but they're less expensive, more technologically savvy team members to build margins in their business model, right? Eliminating those positions that they feel they can facilitate through technology. So it's a fascinating time frame. But so yeah, I would say, like, my biggest concerns going into this election is how are we going to protect the safety by leveraging artificial intelligence, because there's a lot of cybersecurity concerns, but also how can we find truth in all of it? What is truth, and how do we create that dynamic?
I love that. I mean, because you're so right. Every day when I come in to prep the show, depending on what source you look at, you're going to get a different spin on the same story, the same issues. So we're at a point where we really do have to dot the I's and cross the T's, and no longer can we just take things at face value. And we're seeing a lot of folks that want to take that and then just blow it up, and people buy into it hook, line, and sinker. So asking that question of where is truth, I think it's really timely right now. And I kind of want to hit a little bit, Ryan, on what you said about AI, because that is a real issue.
It is.
And it is causing problems. And yes, it's 3 steps forward, but sometimes 2 back. And what AI can't substitute is human connection. And I think people are getting so enamored by what AI can do and the accuracy, and it's exciting. But we're also seeing that a lot of people feel like they can just substitute the human connection. And that's why the Surgeon General is saying, hello, let's pump the brakes, because we have a loneliness epidemic. More and more people are feeling as if they don't need that connection. So let's start here with you, Kimber, from that younger generation. What concerns you about AI maybe wiping out jobs or replacing connection?
Well, such a good question. And I think when my first thought immediately goes to, as a college student, I take a lot of different classes, and I'm a journalism major. So a lot of my classes revolve around writing and researching and creating. And so I've definitely seen that a huge thing. is that our school policy is to not use AI in production of our work, but it is such a huge temptation for students because it makes it so easy. And as I see how easy it is that the AI can make it to produce things as simple as putting in a few facts of what you did or found out to have it write you an article on an event, it can be so easy for the AI to produce things without that person needing to be involved. And it's also so possible to produce things that really are not necessarily accurate,
Right.
but to produce it in a sense that people don't recognize as accurate because they think of AI as being the ultimate intelligence, as being kind of an ethical, bipartisan almost. Whereas in reality, all AI, it's been coded by someone, it's been programmed by someone to have a certain agenda, and also I think that that's something that a lot of people, when they go to use their AI, don't recognize and don't remember, and they don't fully wrap their minds around the fact that AI can have a huge influence on that kind of, that truth factor, like you said, right? And I think that that is a huge thing that my generation hasn't fully come to terms with yet, but that there are certain people who are starting to see it, and I definitely think that's a concern. I also think that my generation is a very big advocate for AI in the terms of using it to produce more, and personally, I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like there are so many ethical questions as far as the use of AI, and where it gets in the way of those people that need jobs, and where it helps the people and within their jobs to create better work. And I think that there's it's a fine line. There's fine lines in lots of things, but I think that's one that the fine line is really, really hard to find and to walk.
Right, yeah, we are definitely seeing that, and we're seeing more and more people feeling like, hey, I don't need human connection because AI can do it all. I've seen stories, I mean, believe it or not, you guys may have seen them, of people who want to marry their AI chatbots because they can program them to be exactly what they want. So I think it is crossing over and impacting a lot of how we see the world. Carl, how about you as you think about AI and the quest for truth and how AI might impact relationships? What stands out to you?
A couple of things, and you mentioned the separation. Suicide in this last year in the Bond County Sheriff's area has been significant, and I think that's due to people kind of turning into themselves and then not having that face-to-face interaction with people, and that is concerning. It's the impact on the family, the impact on first responders. It's very significant, very concerning. You have a lot of things on suicide prevention hotlines, but most of the people that are approaching that position or that situation, they're not reaching out to them. I feel like that all is connected to that. The other thing is, and again, you mentioned, I remember when they talked about programming computers and stuff, it was garbage in, you get garbage out, right?
Right.
How is that truth? When you get some response from through AI and any research that you're doing, how do you know that is factual or truthful? And so again, it kind of opens up that, where do you find that truth?
Right, and I have to wonder too, how does that impact imagination? If people aren't having to really flex that creativity so much. Jen, how about you?
Well, I guess the opposite of AI, artificial intelligence, would be another AI, authentic intelligence, right? And that's where your imagination comes in, just like you said. I mean, we ought to be able to discern right from wrong and truth from falsehoods if we are truly a well-rounded person who has heard different viewpoints. And that's my concern about always wanting to listen or be with people who agree with me. And it takes much more of a challenge, as we have discovered, right, to actually listen authentically to someone with whom we disagree. Or perhaps have a different background entirely. And it can be religious. It's certainly in the education realm. It's one of my concerns about trying to withdraw children out of public education, Because in a public school, you are with people you normally wouldn't choose to be
That's
with.
right.
And you have to learn to get along. The playground, all the things we had to learn growing up in a public school setting. It's important for us to be able to learn to discern.
I love
Right from wrong.
that,
Yeah.
Jen, and interestingly enough, the word of the year is authentic. So I think we're at a point where we are craving a little more authenticity
Yeah.
because we're not getting it like we once did. And amen to what you're saying about learning to get along, because I think sometimes we get so focused on curriculum or what is going to be taught, and we forget that education is about more than just the ABCs and the 1, 2, 3s. And that leads us right to you, Ryan, because a lot of what you're doing is that personal development. And there are some things that you're not just going to get in a book.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting, right? I think we are the most socially connected, emotionally disconnected generation that's ever been.
I love that.
Right? We're in a time frame where I know what's going on with the vast majority of my friends in their lives, but I haven't had a conversation with them in 5, 10 years. But I follow them, I'm engaged with them, I like their posts, I comment. And so I think there is that misnomer, as we've been discussing, of people being so emotionally disconnected from each other. Authenticity is a real thing.
Yeah.
You know, having those authentic, real, my kids, you know, I have 3 children, and my oldest is a senior, my middle daughter is a sophomore, and my youngest is a 7th grader. So I tell people all the time we're the triple S's right now, right? The 3 S's. But my oldest is like, there's no reason for, yeah, she's almost done, almost graduated. My middle daughter loves high school. She loves the social aspect of it. And what's fascinating to me, to your point, is that we have to find a way inside of our education system to create more emotional connection and attachment. Because my oldest is completely disassociated. She like shows up for 2 hours, you know, every day and checks in and checks out. But she's emotionally disconnected from the vast majority of the people that are there. And not that it's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. That's something that we still have to figure out as parents. But we do live in a generation where, you know, as a parent raising the triple S's, I have to be very cognizant of the things that they're consuming, because to your point, the suicide rates are so high because there's this whole level of comparison too. Comparison to the inauthentic, right? And that's what it is. It's comparison to the inauthentic, to the not real, to the superficial that's posted through social media. And these social media influencers are trying to do their best, right? They're trying to find a way to create that dynamic of follow me because that's how I make money. Right? And it's unfortunate that that's the push. Now, it's totally different. So I ran a digital marketing company for 15 years as well, and so I have a pretty deep understanding of social media and the psychology of consumer behavior and how it's influenced by social. I think it's a positive and a negative thing. I think it's really a positive and negative thing. But to that point, like I do think that, and going back to tying in with the artificial intelligence dynamic, I always look at artificial intelligence as the passenger in a car, riding in the passenger seat. It's only as good as the input. The output is only as good as the input that we give it, right? But I think that's, you know, the same thing with everything that we're talking about today, in terms of what are some of the biggest concerns in our community, as I see it from a professional development group, where we're talking about personally and professionally developing and building authentic, real relationships. It really truly is that element of loneliness that people feel.
Yes.
Right? They want to be connected. They find their connection mechanism for the most part is through social media. And as a byproduct of the algorithms behind the scenes, you see what you like to see, and not really anything else.
Yeah.
There's no push and pull in terms of 2 opinions. It's like it's all one dimensional. And unfortunately, we're just so influenced by the dopamine dynamic of being on social media. But then above and beyond that, we believe what we believe based on what someone else is saying versus being truth seekers. And what I find with our business inside of RiseX is we have conversations with people all the time that business leaders in the community that in some cases are struggling personally. You know, we talk about their personal struggles. I'm struggling with this. I'm struggling with my daughter, my son, and oftentimes it's just having someone in your corner to be encouraging and to share encouragement that makes all the difference. You know, I think that it's one of those things that we can talk about from a government perspective, we can talk about from a political perspective, we can talk about from a business perspective, but I really, really, truly love, I listened to a gentleman by the name of Ed Milet, and one of the things that he always talks about is he says, I take at least one day a week and I reach out to 5 people and just tell them that I love them. Just know that they're recognized and they're heard. Because I think we live in a world where that's not as prevalent as it used to be.
It's really not, Ryan, and I love that you said we're socially connected but disconnected. I think that sums it up so beautifully, and people want to be seen and heard and valued, and we're in this day and age where everything is quick and we don't have to wait for anything, and we're all about problem solving, and sometimes what people really need is not for us to solve the problem, but just to say, I'm in your corner, I love you. So I love, what a challenge, just to let the people in your circle know that you're there. That makes a huge difference. And Kimber, you're kind of in that younger demographic that we're talking about. So I would love to get a little perspective from you on how that comparison aspect of social media, because all of us, we didn't really grow up in that time where if you didn't get invited to a party, you might have known about it, but you didn't see the whole thing live stream.
That's exactly right.
And now it's like, not only do you know you were left out, you get to watch everybody having such a good time. And we don't stop and think that people put their best on social media, that there's a different story going on behind the camera. So oftentimes our self-esteem does take a bit of a hit. So how have you found that impacting you and your friends and those around you?
Yeah. Oh boy. I will say, I was raised in a family that was, I suppose you could say that they did a little bit of sheltering, but social media was not something that I really participated in growing up. I didn't really get into the social media world until I was an adult, and I was sort of like, I'm out of the house now, Mom. You can't say I can't have it. A little bit of a rebel, I suppose. But I appreciate that, though, because I was able to fully develop myself and develop my own opinions and my own self-value before I was on there looking what other people put forward. And I feel like that's something that a lot of other people don't benefit from, because I see so many of my friends who've been on social media since they were 10 or 11. And at that point, it's constantly a matter of, oh, do I look cool? Or, oh, do I look like I'm having fun? Like you said, that comparison, that, there's, other people are watching and are seeing what you're doing. And so I like to share things because I have aunts and uncles that are interested in my life, and I have friends from high school who are interested in my life, and so I do post things. But it's more just like, oh, hey, this is an update on what's been fun for me, rather than trying to make myself look as like I'm the coolest person possible. But I do see that, and I have seen that in other people that I have relationships with, where they kind of tailor what they're posting or what they're sharing on their social media to try and make it look like they're having the best life possible. And I think it's a little bit sad, because there's a little bit of a pressure to have a good life, or to at least look like you're having a good life. I think that's something that everyone can apply to, and that good life looks different for every generation, for every culture, for every dynamic. And that good life that I've noticed is, especially in my generation, is having things.
Right.
That is something that has become a huge push, and social media, I think, has made that comparison of I don't have this so huge. If you remember, in the last year or two, there was that enormous, hilarious obsession with the Stanley Cups.
Oh, yes.
And that, what cracked me up was that it originated with moms just thinking that these cups were convenient, and so then it kind of got popular on social media. And then there's all these girls who are in middle school, who are 11 and 12 years old, and you think, oh my gosh, this is the trendy thing. And so they pestered their parents for months. I have to have a Stanley Cup. And next thing you know, all these little middle schooler girls are walking around with their Lululemon leggings and their Stanley Cups and their perfect makeup. And it's that social media, that comparison of, oh, I want to have that thing because this person that is cool has that thing. And I think that has been such a huge cultural and generational effect from social media.
Oh, you're right. There's a lot of pressure put on the shoulders. You can't just have a nice cup, it's gotta be the name brand. And once upon a time, think about it, I mean, if you didn't have something, you didn't really recognize that everybody else had it, because unless you were around them or talking to them, we didn't have this ability to see what everybody else is doing. And I think sometimes it gets us out of our lane and gets us to lose focus because we're so worried trying to keep up with everybody else. Carl, what have you kind of seen in the work that you do with how this impacts people?
I've thought this a couple of times now in our conversation, is the impact. So back in I came from a background of crime prevention, and we used to talk about how when people moved from their front porch to their backyards with their privacy fences, there was a pretty significant increase in property crimes, because now people weren't watching out for their neighbors. They were hiding in their backyards and, in their hot tubs or their swimming pools, and so things were going on in the neighborhood that you didn't know about. A lot of times people would have a moving van pull up to a neighbor's house and completely empty it, and a burglary, and then the people that lived around was like, well, I saw that van there, but I didn't think about it, and so we've lost track with our neighbors, and knowing who they are and kind of what their habits are by that. And that was again during the 60s and 70s, but now with this social interaction with devices and stuff that everybody's paying attention to, we've completely lost that social interaction. And I think that is again a significant issue with the social issues that are going on. Again, we mentioned suicide and people withdrawing, and mental health issues, I think, are a huge result of that. Much of our jail now, we're just building an expansion to house primarily mental health problems that people end up committing crimes because of that mental health deficit that they have. And so that's all is part of this whole social media thing that's driving that kind of behavior.
Well, and Carl, we are seeing kids at younger and younger ages have debilitating anxiety, and even for folks who have, a mental health condition, that constant comparison, that feeling as if they're on the outside, that alienation certainly does not do anything to help with that. That's for sure. Thank you for sharing that. Jan, how about you as you think about all of this?
It brings up, when you mentioned the front porch versus the backyard, I think you've heard from Karen Lansing about the Habitat for Humanity development that's going to be happening here.
Peterson Park,
Peterson Place,
yeah,
right.
Peterson Place, yeah.
And what's going to happen there is an intentional facing of small homes around a green area in the middle, where you have anywhere from 6 to 10 homes, all facing each other, all right, and sharing space, and sharing front porch. I mean, the front porches are going to be facing each other, where your cars are parked in carports along the edge. And it's an intentional way of trying to build community. You can't force things, but you can say we're going to construct a community efficiently, and for low-income folks who maybe work all the time, to really try to have a sense of community in where you live. And I believe that's, maybe what suburbia was supposed to be like intentionally, but originally we had front porches, and now we have garage door openers, right, that automatically cut us off. I mean, some of that's structural, but some of it is really, we have to look at how we construct our communities, good planning and zoning, good ways of how do we construct communities that foster, more neighborhood feeling and a togetherness and a sense of neighborliness. We can do that.
You both are right on point with those privacy fences, and then people just quickly putting the garage door up, and hopefully my neighbor didn't see me and I can get in my house and not have to interact. And we're seeing so much more of that. People almost debilitated if they have to talk to somebody on the phone. And you see some of this younger generation, and it's like, I don't want to call and place an order. Can I just do it without having to talk to somebody? I don't want to go in and face to face give my order. I just want to rush in and pick it up or have DoorDash do it for me.
Yeah.
And that goes to that isolation that you were kind of talking about, Carl. Jen, I'm glad you brought up Peterson Place because I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that planned community that encourages community impacts people's lives and what we might learn from that. Ryan, how about you as you're thinking about all of this and that isolation?
Well, it's fascinating to me that, to Carl's perspective, we do live in a time of it's a mental pandemic, a mental health pandemic. And how we address that, I'm not sure. I know we're terribly understaffed when it comes to counselors, and especially going through 2000 to 2002, 2003 through COVID, when there was a forced isolation, it really caused people to appreciate the fact that they could work from home for many, right? Because it forced companies to be creative and be dynamic and give opportunities for moms now to be in the home and be able to still provide an income for their home while still being able to take care of their children, which I think is fascinating. All of my businesses that I've ever built, I've built with work, stay-at-home moms that want to be moms first and business second. And I think it's been super interesting. But I do think there has been a tremendous amount of impact that all generations are feeling. The loneliness of the elderly community.
That's huge.
Right? You have they don't have access per se to some of the resources that the younger communities have for the detrimental decisions that some are making right now. But I think it's really up to us as citizens in the community to be different.
Yeah.
Right? It takes one decision at a time. I had a mentor of mine who was the president of Melaleuca, a gentleman by the name of McKay Christensen. I don't know if any of you know him, but he said, your decisions determine your destiny. And I think it's really on every single one of us to try a little harder, to reach out a little more effectively, to be a little more authentic with each other. Because you just never know. One thing that I've learned is you never know what your neighbor is battling with or struggling with, and everybody is battling and struggling with something. And so I think, I found several times, and I shared some of my journey through COVID and through, some of my own, and I never struggled with mental health issues. Early on in my life, I was always very confident, played a lot of sports, and that brought high levels of confidence to me. But even going through the COVID dynamic, it was always a feeling of like isolation. I'm not used to this. And so even some of those thoughts of depression and anxiety crept into my mind, and I'm like, what? I've never even experienced these things before. But I don't think there's, and I would even say with men, number one, we're terrible at expressing our emotions, right? Anyone that's been married to one or that's been around one long enough to know we're terrible with our emotions. But I do think there's a different dynamic of authenticity if we as men made the decision to really share with other men that may be struggling, especially in communities. I think it'll have a huge impact. Because there is this new movement, right? The Brene Brown movement of women are powerful, which they are. Right? They should be able to stand alone, which they should. But this whole isolation of, well, I can do it without you, is really a tough jam on men who really are trying their best to provide an adequate living for their family. I mean, 7 kids, it's been a journey, I'm sure, right? And feeling like, that we can be strong providers in all aspects, but then when we come home at night and our wives are like, well, I don't need you, I'm gonna go do my thing, it's like, all we want to do is be cared about, right? So I think there's this interesting dynamic from a mental health perspective of, I think men are probably struggling with it even more than women are. And that's where you're probably seeing a lot from a crime perspective. It's very rare if you see pictures of women mugshots on East Idaho News, right? Or right? It's always men that, in my opinion, may not have that emotional attachment to something that's positive in their life. And I think we can all do a better job of recognizing each other and really reaching out to each other. But I found when I reach out to my closest friend, well, not even my closest friends, to all my friends, they're like, I'm really glad you're thinking about me today. I was struggling, And so I think it's, it's a combination. We're talking about a lot of things, but I really do think you know, as we look at the bigger picture of where are we today, truth is hard to find, right? It's really
true.
hard to find. We don't know what to believe. I don't know what to believe. I'm very proficient with online digital media and social media, and I'm very proficient with understanding how to help businesses lead and grow. But I do think that we are missing that core foundational principles of what the Constitution was built on, and it's being questioned and pulled in so many different ways that we're missing the foundational components that give us structure. You know, there's an attack on the family.
Oh, very
Right,
much.
a high level attack on the family. The traditional definition of the family is being questioned and pulled in so many different directions. And that core structure really does build stability for our kids, for our communities, for everything that comes in context with that. And so I think that we as community individuals, as leaders, as you know, potential candidates or leaders in the community, I think we really have to focus on how do we create opportunities for people to create that social and emotional engagement with each other. I think that Peterson project is fantastic. I think it'll be awesome. You know, I think that from a community perspective, I think we as citizens in Eastern Idaho need to do a better job of, as individuals or as leaders, of looking beyond what we are currently doing and make contributions to the local community. I've been in several communities where their parks are fantastic and amazing. And I'm not putting a dig on our parks and recreations departments or anything, but there's little to no investment in the growth and the success of the recreational dynamic of how, because getting out into the clean, fresh air and being able to have access to it is intoxicating. Right?
And it improves that mental health.
Right? And so there's so many elements of that, even inside of our own community. I think about, I travel to small cities. My oldest daughter played softball for several years. We travel to small cities and that are half the size, and their local facilities for their youth were 3 times better than what we have here. And I'm not trying to diss on anything, but the focus of our local government needs to be on creating atmospheres, experiences, and opportunities so that our people can flourish. They want to be here. They want to engage.
Yeah.
They want to be engaged. They want to be involved. I know there's a lot of individual, you know, it's fascinating to me. From a business perspective, I'll share my 2 cents. I feel like this community it's a bunch of puzzle pieces. And what I mean by that is there's very well-intentioned individuals that are trying to do their best to create a business networking group or a nonprofit organization. And there has to be at some point this unification of all things.
Yes.
I have a really dear friend of mine that's new to this community, and he's come from outside, Paul Baker. I
Oh,
think you
yes.
spoke with
Yeah.
Paul Baker, this
Yeah,
new
I've had
CEO
him
of the
on.
Greater Idaho Falls Chamber of Commerce. And I call him the Puzzle Master. Because for the first time ever, and it had to be someone from outside, which is funny to me, but it had to be from someone from outside that said, hey, I need this part of this good thing, I need this part of this good thing, and this part of this good thing, and let's start putting it together to build a beautiful community, to build a beautiful region. And I think for the first time ever, like, the walls are being put down because there's not an agenda and an ego associated with it. I've had my own ego, right? I'm the first to admit it. But I think if there's this unification of natural resources and experiences with powerful business experiences of people raising each other, and then the individual intimate relationships and outreach and caring about the mental health of each other, I think those things could really, in my opinion, I think that, you know, to Jan's point earlier, that's the beautiful thing about our community. Like, you come here and you're welcomed.
Yes.
Right? We still have a lot of that, but what I'm hearing from Carl is that we're still missing because there's still things that are happening that shouldn't be because we're not reaching out to each other. And I know we talked about all sorts of things, but I guess that's kind of where my mindset goes to, is how do we strengthen the foundational components of an area that can really build people in the right way and give hope. Again, that's the thing that I get the most frustrated about with our news media, is it feels in so many ways that it's discouraging and taking hope, because it's like I can't say anything or somebody's going to demolish me or move me into one. I hope that there's people in our community that really have the keen interest in bringing hope back into the lives of every single one of us in one form or fashion.
Well said. You know, hope is the only thing that's stronger than fear. And when we infuse hope, a lot of really good things happen. And I love that you brought up Paul Baker, because it's fun to see what he's been able to accomplish in about a year, launching that new Emerging Leaders program.
Yeah.
It really is about connection,
It is.
any way you slice it. But I want to pick up on something you said. It takes courage
It does.
to speak up and to share your story. I say all the time, be brave, be bold, and share your story. But in this era of cancel culture, it makes it tough for people to want to go out on a limb because no one wants to be unfriended or alienated or canceled, and it still is a pretty big issue. So, Kimber, let's go right here to you. What have you seen? Because you're kind of growing up in that cancel culture era.
I think that the biggest thing that I've observed is that, kind of as each one of you has mentioned, there's sort of a phenomenon of people living in a bubble, and they don't want to hear things that they don't agree with, and so they don't put themselves in situations to ever interact with people they don't agree with. And so then, especially when there are people in positions of power or public positions, when they don't agree with on policies or values, then it's the instinct of these people who have put themselves in a situation to never hear anything that they disagree with, to say, well, I don't like your opinion, so I don't want you up there. And I've seen that in so many different ways and atmospheres. There's been so many cases of people that sometimes they're people I have respect for, and sometimes they're people that I think maybe need to improve on their values a little bit. But either way, every person has their own opinions. And there have been a lot of people who have expressed their own opinions in a way that is their total right to, and for that have had whole groups of people who disagree with them say, you don't deserve to have a platform, you don't deserve to be successful because I disagree with you on this. And I think that's a really big problem, because in order to be successful, in order to develop that community that we're talking about, where people can work together and solve problems and have that connection, people need to be willing to listen to each other's ideas. You need to be willing to question and be curious and think about things in new ways. And I think that is something that my generation has a really bad habit of disregarding. I'm sure you've all noticed that my generation tends to have a fairly large ego. And I imagine that's probably true of every generation when they're at this age, is to think that we have a lot of knowledge.
And our music is better.
I don't know about that, but exactly, there's a sense of ego. Oh, I know things, and why would I listen to other people's opinions? Because I obviously know best, and that's such a huge problem, because if you only ever look at things from your point of view, you're not actually going to grow. You're just going to. There's something that we talked about in one of my classes recently. It was called confirmation bias. And when you surround yourself with people who say the same things as you, you feel like you're knowing more about what your opinion is, but really these other people are just growing your ego in that sense of knowledge about that. And so I think that a lot of the people my age have been put in situations and have put themselves in situations where they're not really challenged to discuss and to think constructively and to have to deal with other people's opinions in a civil manner. I think if you were to look on social media and you were to see the sort of stereotype of people my age talking about their opinions with people they disagree with, it's typically a very angry discussion of college students on a campus.
We've seen a lot of that.
Yeah, those videos go viral all the time, and it's because these kids don't know how to say something that they don't understand or don't agree with, and say, you know what, I don't understand this, and I have a different opinion on this, and rather than try to discuss it and grow and have it be a community thing, they say, well, I obviously know best, so I'm going to almost lecture you on why you're wrong, and it doesn't really help any of the people in that circumstance to grow. And so that's something that I really prioritize, especially in my interactions at college with other students in growing the Turning Point USA chapter, is that it's a matter of putting students in places, and putting all people really in places where they're sharing ideas and discussing, and they're not necessarily going to agree on things, but it's a civil experience, not an angry experience.
I love that, and that is really the basis for which Table Talk was created. It's about this belief that I hold dear in my heart, that there is room at the table for everyone. And unfortunately, as you're adequately expressing, Kimber, sometimes people are made to feel as if they can't come to the table unless they're willing to sign off on everybody else's opinion and follow that. And you know, it's very interesting. You brought up Ryan Brene Brown, who happens to be one of my favorite authors. I quote her quite a lot, but she says something, and I think it fits really well into what you're saying, Kimber, that there is a difference between fitting in and belonging. And fitting in requires us to change and adjust who we are, and belonging requires us to just come as we are and really be something you said, Jen, authentic. Yeah, that authenticity. And so I think we're at a point, we've covered so much where really it's about how do we bridge the gaps that separate us. And I say this all the time. It's okay to lean in. Other people's opinions are not contagious. You can lean in and get curious, and there's a lot of magic that happens there. But I want to share the 3 things about bridging the gap. First of all, it starts with a recognition of shared humanity. And we have got to elevate humanity if we hope to make a difference. I mean, you look at what happened a year ago, October 7th. The only way that could have happened is because those terrorists absolutely stopped seeing their enemies as human beings. That's the only way that level of brutality could have happened. And then when we're bridging the gap, sometimes people think it's about persuasion, but it's not about persuasion. It's about understanding, coming to that understanding. And then this is, I think, the most important one. You are not required to abandon or water down your values or beliefs. You can still find common ground, even if you disagree. And again, Carl and Jen, you guys are great examples of that, that you can have this shared humanity, this respectful discourse, and I think that's a beautiful thing to see. Well, we are getting close to the end of time, so what I want to do is kind of give each of you a chance to kind of summarize what you're feeling, and I want to kind of throw this out because we talked a lot about the way it used to be in neighborhoods, people interacting more, and now we're kind of more withdrawn. There's that loneliness epidemic, we're disconnected. So if you could bring back something from another decade, another generation that you think would be able to make a difference right now, what would that be? And Kimber, for you, because you're much younger, as you look at other generations, maybe, you know, through movies or through reading, is there something from another generation that really appeals to you that you would like to see be brought back to the forefront? So let's go ahead and start with you, Carl. Oh, I'm not putting you on the spot or anything, right?
I think, again, that generation of people reaching out and caring for each other, and actually, you know, kind of that community thing, when you see homes being built by a group of people that are just neighbors that are helping each other, and just making one particular person's problem theirs, as far as helping them with it. Not being a nosy neighbor, but just being able to work together, and they don't have to agree the same thing, they don't have to believe the same things, but just working hard to help somebody else. Again, that humanity part.
That humanity is so important, and you know, the truth continues to be when we lose ourselves in the service of other people, that's really when we find ourselves. Jen, how about you?
It reminds me of my Girl Scout years, what you were talking about, and I know Girl Scouting is still around. I don't know how strong it is nationwide, but my life was shaped by Girl Scouting, and all the values you were talking about, both family values as well as trustworthiness and experiences being more important than hiding inside, getting outdoors, all the things that I feel shape me, in addition to my family, was most definitely the Girl Scout program. And so if I could turn the clock back and say this is what was important and could be still very important for girls, to build their self-esteem, to build skills, to understand who they are, and certainly be more and more accepting of others. All of that is part of the program, so I'll put in 2 cents or a full $1 for the Girl Scouts.
You know, I'm so glad you brought that up. One of my little pet peeves is the fact that this younger generation is not looking for rock solid role models. Often they're looking for YouTubers who are about the same age, have no more life experience than they do, and they're looking to people who will stoop to any level for a laugh or a like or a follow. And while those things may have their place in society, I would love to see it if we could get back to encouraging young people to identify good, solid role models who can help them navigate the changes and challenges of life. So thank you. And Ryan, how about you?
You know, a thought came across my mind when you asked that question, and it was like, I wish we could get back to the old days of baseball in the backyard.
Oh, yes.
Right? I mean, where parents, I remember growing up where we would play for hours and hours, and I don't think my parents ever knew where I was or what I was doing, but there was so much confidence in the community that they were safe, that I was safe, that they didn't care, right? And I think we live in a time now where I know for myself, I'm often checking the location of my kids to see where are they.
Right.
You know, we live in a world of such skepticism. So I guess my thought would be if I could bring back the days of, well, without social media for one, but bring back the days of just caring enough, you know, to Carl's perspective, caring enough about each other that you really go out of your way and make a sacrifice on behalf of someone else. You know, I think we're probably more selfish than we've ever been, but we're forced to do a little bit with COVID, right? We were forced into our homes, and it was kind of stay away from everybody, don't talk to anybody, don't get anybody sick, you know. And so I think if we could get back to those days of really reaching out and taking care of and thinking about and encouraging and, you know, like we talked about earlier, giving hope to each other.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a fun time growing up because I felt like that's what I lived inside of. And that's where I guess the roots of where I've come from is like excitement and hope and encouragement and drive and authenticity and all those things. And you know, I hope that we and again, it's up to each one of us, like to reach out individually and maybe get out of our comfort zone a little bit to reach out to those people in our world and just see how they're doing. You know, because I think that back in the day when I was growing up, I saw that happen all the time.
A lot more, didn't we?
A lot more.
And as you were talking about those backyard baseball games, it really took me back to a happy place of childhood where that's what you did. You made your own fun. And now we see that kids are wanting to be entertained 24/7 with the latest video game or, oh, those graphics are boring, they're not as exciting. But back in the day, we made fun out of just the basic nothing, right? It was fun to hang out in the backyard. So I'm right there with you. Let's find a way to kick it old school, right?
That's right.
I tell my kids all the time, look, I'm just old school enough to still be cool. So, but I think there is something about kind of getting back to some of that old school interaction. And Kimber, we are all eager to see what you would like to see brought back.
I think that looking back on, you know, media and literature from previous generations, a quality that I saw really frequently that doesn't really show up today is that concept of high expectations, high love, like digging in, having that grit, achieving things, going for things. I feel like today's culture is a lot of low expectations. Everyone is just okay as they are to not try for things. I think that we need to have high love for people and love them as they are, but then also have those high expectations for people. say you are capable of a lot and you have potential for a lot, so why are you sitting on your butt on social media, not doing any of this stuff? Why are you not going out and achieving things? Why are you not going out and creating connections and networking? And if you have a goal, achieving it, you know? And so I think that that's a huge thing that I don't see in my own generation is that high expectation, high love as a society.
I love that. Raising the bar, right? And that's always a good thing. Well, Kimber and Ryan and Jen and Carl, thanks so much. It has been such a pleasure, and the time has just flown by.
Quite the journey.
Yeah, getting to chat with you guys, and I feel like we've covered quite a bit of ground. And KID crew, I'm so glad that you spent some time with us. Thanks for being here. Again, a great big thank you to Gandolfo's for our delicious lunch. And thank you to Mark and his team at Classic Interiors for powering Table Talk. Table Talk is all about engaging in those productive dialogues. So share this and let's keep this conversation going because there's a lot to build on. All right, KID crew, thanks so much. And don't forget, I am launching on Friday a brand new passion project. It's the Justice Shuffle, and every week we're going to be highlighting a card from the cold case deck, Idaho case, and do what we can to help these families who are still struggling for answers get some of those answers. You never know, you could be holding the missing piece. All right, thanks again, KID crew.